Are you thinking of moving to Dallas, Texas? Well, in this video, I want to share with you the pros and cons of Dallas, Texas, coming right up. If this is your first time to this channel and you want to know everything about Dallas, Texas, then make sure to subscribe below, click the bell notification so you're the first to know of the market update. My name is Daniel, and if you're thinking of moving in a few weeks or a few months or even a year down the line, make sure to call me, text, email, whatever you prefer. I'm happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. When we're talking about the pros in Dallas, number one is the strong job market. The economy here in Dallas is very stable, very strong. As you are aware of, a lot of companies are relocating to Dallas because companies have the benefit to live in Dallas. They see the benefits of living in Dallas, so they want to move their headquarters here. They want to send all their workers, all the people, their employees to move to Dallas because it's such a great city for companies to grow, to develop. And not just companies are moving here. There's a lot of startups here in Dallas as well because Dallas is a great place for these big companies. So we got big companies like AT&T and a lot of other tech companies and business, finance. A lot of these companies are moving here, as I'm sure you know, Toyota moved here as well not too long ago. So a lot of companies are coming here to Dallas because they know that it's a great place, not just for their companies, of course that's why they're moving, but also for their employees, for employees who have families. They know that this is a great place for families to raise their kids, and that's why they're moving out here. Number two, affordable cost of living. Now, I'm not talking about that if you go to the grocery stores, supermarkets, that all the food that you purchase is going to be cheap. I'm not talking about that. Yes, gas here is cheap in Dallas, but I'm not talking about like that kind of cost of living. I'm talking about housing prices. And why is that so important is because housing prices are fairly cheaper here in Dallas compared to other cities such as LA or New York or Chicago. What that does is that makes our cost of living affordable, that you can actually buy a house, you can actually purchase a house. That's one of the main reasons why a lot of people from out of state from like those big major cities want to move to Dallas because it's affordable, because you can buy a house. Whereas people in those major cities are just paying rent. They're paying like thousands of dollars every month to live in a small house or an apartment because they just can't afford to buy a house, can't get a loan. And the reason why people want to move here to Dallas is because they can actually buy and purchase a house. And that's probably the number one thing that we need here, right? Of course, we need food, we need transportation, but we also need housing. And because you can buy a house here in Dallas, that makes cost of living affordable. Yes, you're going to see cheaper prices where it comes to such as gas, not like too much of grocery shopping, but gas is going to be cheap. But the fact that your mortgage payment isn't going to be a couple $1,000s and you just throw it away you just give it to a landlord, and then you're like constantly moving to different apartments or different houses every year or two. You don't have to do that. You can just settle here in Dallas, find a house, buy a house, and just kind of stay there for 5 years, 10 years, however long you want. You don't have to have that worrisome of when do I got to rent? When do I got to renew the rent? When do I got to find another place to rent? So that's what I'm talking about when I say affordable cost of living. Number three is great neighborhoods. Now, we're talking about Dallas, but we're not talking about downtown Dallas specifically, but just in general, broad, the city of Dallas, where there are a lot of suburbs here in Dallas. We're talking suburbs such as Plano, Allen, Frisco, McKinney, Richardson, Addison. We're talking about Capel, Flower Mound. So there are a lot of these cities in Dallas that are just some great suburbs. And so what that does is that makes it very family friendly because of all these suburbs with these great school districts. What that does for people who have kids like myself is we feel comfortable that we can raise a family here because of the great suburbs. Now, if you want to live in the city of Dallas, that's not a problem, but a lot of people who do live in the city of Dallas are more of like the young professionals, people who don't really have families, but people who do have families that work near or in downtown Dallas, then they do live in the city of Dallas. But a lot of young people like Dallas, downtown Dallas, because it's a lot of fun, a lot of food, entertainment. But a lot of these families who want to move to Dallas, they end up in one of the suburbs, like I mentioned, Frisco, Allen, Plano, Flower Mound, Capel, Grapevine, Keller, all these different cities in Dallas, all these suburbs. That's where they want to move to because it's family friendly, because of the school districts, because it's more safe. Now, when we talk about downtown Dallas, we're talking about the city of Dallas. Sometimes it may not be as safe as the suburbs, which is with any major city, right? If you live in, let's say, for example, downtown LA versus like a suburb in LA, it's going to be a lot different when it comes to safety. And so that's the same thing here in Dallas. So one of the great reasons why people love Dallas is because of the great neighborhoods, the great suburbs here. Number 4 is that there is no state income tax. And people love that here in Texas. And of course, people are going to talk about property tax, which I'll mention as a con in Texas, in Dallas. But here in Dallas, one of the great things is that there is no state income tax. So of course, yes, we do pay less tax because of that. People who are renting just love that because they don't have to pay state income tax. People who have a house, of course, property tax is going to be higher, but there is no state income tax. And that's one of the reasons why I love what I love about Dallas is that I used to always have to pay state income tax, but living here in Dallas, it's like, okay, no state income tax. This is brilliant. And now, in a sense, I'm kind of used to it. I'm kind of like, oh, no state income tax. That's kind of a norm for me. So it's not like a benefit as it feels, but I'm sure if I had to pay for state income tax, then I would realize the value of not having to pay for state income tax. But that is a great pro in living in Dallas. So if you move out here to Dallas, then you're going to, obviously when you file for your taxes, you're going to pay less taxes. So that's going to feel great. And so you're going to really like that. So no state income tax here in Dallas, Texas. Now we've talked about the pros, and those aren't all the pros in Dallas, but those are kind of the major pros, the top 4 pros that I believe are in Dallas. But let's talk about the cons. What are some negative things about living here in Dallas? Number 1 is traffic and congestion. The highways here, the freeways here are not built in like the greatest way you can kind of build these roads, these highways, freeways. I wish the people that had built them had done a better job, but it's not like easy access. The great thing about here in Dallas is we do have service roads. So as there are tolls, then you don't want to pay for tolls. You can get on the service road, which is kind of like the side road. And if you kind of miss a spot, you can take a U-turn on the service road. So that's pretty cool. Service roads are basically just like on the side of the tolls where you have signal lights and not as much signal lights, not as many signal lights as regular local streets. But that's the good thing about service roads. But the traffic here is pretty bad. Now, of course, when we talk about major cities like Chicago, New York, or LA, those we talk about congested roads there. That's like terrible over there. Now, here in Dallas, of course, you have this mindset of Dallas not being like that huge busy city like New York, LA, or Chicago, but it's still congested. Traffic here is still bad here in downtown. The highways, the freeways, like I said, are not built in a great way. I wish, they did a better way, but like you can miss kind of exits, or you can miss like when you change from one freeway to another, you can miss those transfer those exits, and kind of, that's kind of the downside about these Dallas freeways. But it's not as congested, like I said, as those other major cities, but it's still congested, and that's kind of the downside here in Dallas, Texas. Number 2 is extreme weather. Before, I would have just said like it's hot summers, but it kind of changed here in the winter. And now, don't get me wrong, summers are still hot. We still get, I think about, like 4 months or so that are just hot. It's not as humid as cities like Houston, or Houston's like really humid. Here in Dallas, it's more of like the dry side, a little bit of humidity, kind of humid a bit, but it's more on the dry side. And so here in Dallas, when we talk about the summers, man, it is terrible. People who hate the summers just don't like Dallas. And that's kind of the downside here in Dallas. Now, lately, about at least a few years ago, winter has gotten really cold, and it would snow like every once in a while, like every few years in Dallas. But lately it's been snowing, I think, every year. And it got a lot colder than it used to be. I think so. That's kind of my experience. And just kind of experiencing snow. Back then it was only every few years, and now it's like every year. So here we have that difference in that winter season where it does get really cold for a few months. So we get the fall weather, we get the fall season, the spring season, which are just beautiful. Of course, in anywhere in the country, it's beautiful, right? But here also in Dallas, it is beautiful. And so we get those seasons, which are still great. And we don't take those months for granted. And we really like that here. So it does get really hot. It does get really dry. And it does get really cold. So it is extreme weather here in Dallas. People who are okay with the weather, who come from like Chicago, they're like, oh my goodness, Dallas weather is amazing. It's not even cold. And so like I would see people in the winter season here walk around in shorts and shirts, and I'm just thinking, okay, are they from like Chicago, or where are they from? They're obviously not from LA. And so wherever they're from, you know, they're kind of thinking this weather here is nothing in Dallas. So it just really depends on you if you can handle the summer weather, if you can handle the winter season. And so that's kind of the extreme weather here in Dallas. Number 3 is air pollution and allergies. Now, air pollution isn't the greatest here in Dallas. Now, of course, in comparison to like LA, it's like nothing compared to LA. LA has terrible air pollution, as I'm sure you're aware of. But here in Dallas, we still have air pollution. Also, we have a lot of people who come here and they're not used to it, and they get a lot of allergies that kind of just come up. And so there's a lot of pollen in certain seasons of the year. And so that's just kind of a warning that I like to give my clients, because people who move out here, they think, okay, you know, I'm okay with extreme weather. But when they actually live throughout the whole year in Dallas, they kind of experience these allergies that kind of kick in. And so you can have that. Of course, as you live here, you kind of get used to it. But then for some people, it's just like, no, I can't. And so it's always that time of season where a lot of people say, you know, I have allergies, and that kind of just starts for that season. And so that's just kind of a warning. And a lot of people don't know about this until they actually live here. And so that's just kind of what I'm letting you know up front, that you can have that if you are allergic to kind of like pollen or certain air pollution. So just be aware of that if you do think about moving to Dallas. And number 4 is the high property taxes. Now, I did say that there is no state income tax, and that is a pro here in Dallas. But because there is no state income tax, we do have higher property taxes in comparison to other states. Now, when I talk about higher property taxes, what I'm talking about is the percentage is slightly higher than other cities and other states. Now, when we compare in terms of dollar amount, it could be very equal. Like, let's say, for example, in LA, you have a house that's $1 million and the property tax is 1%. Then we're talking about $10,000 a year. And here, let's say, for example, in Dallas, you get a house that's, let's just say, $400,000 and property tax, let's just say it's about 2% roughly, then we're talking about $8,000 in a year. And so what that means is dollar amount might be equal or even less than other cities, or even more. It just depends on the city, of course, and the state. But when I talk about the dollar amount, it's kind of equal, but in terms of percentage, that's kind of, we don't feel good about that. And that's where we're like, man, we have a high property tax. We got to pay as much property tax as people in Los Angeles. So that's kind of the grudge and the complaint that we have here in Dallas about the high property taxes. So just be aware of that. If you do buy a house, you want to contact me anytime you can. And we do look for houses. And after you buy a house, don't tell me, oh my goodness, Daniel, I didn't know that I was paying such high property tax, just because I'm letting you know upfront. And I always tell my clients upfront as well, property tax is going to be high. Just be aware of that. Don't think it's only going to be like a couple $1,000s a year. It is going to be about like 6, 7, 8,000, maybe 10,000, depending on how much of a property value you purchase. So that's kind of the high property taxes as a negative here in Dallas, Texas. So my final thoughts of living in Dallas is I love Dallas. Yes, there are a lot of negatives, there are a lot of cons, but there are more pros that I believe are worth living in Dallas. And one of the greatest pro I believe is that it's affordable cost of living. That's one of the things that I really love about Dallas, that I can buy a house myself because I can afford one. Whereas if I were to live in another city, who knows if I can afford buying a house there, paying off that kind of mortgage. So that's one of the greatest reasons why I love Dallas, Texas. And overall, I do like Dallas. Everyone has their own thoughts. Everyone has their own opinions. People are going to say, oh, they love Houston better. They love Austin better. But me, I love Dallas. That's why I live here, right? So there you go, the pros and cons of Dallas, Texas. And if you're thinking of moving in a few weeks, few months, or a year down the line, feel free to call, text, email me, whatever you prefer. I'm happy to help you move to Dallas, Texas. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.